Ladies and gentlemen, this is the 12th and final round.
Right hand, Golovkin steps in and down he goes again. Unbelievable. Mayweather makes him pay. What a rookie mistake. A sensational left hook by De La Hoya.
It's facts. I'm the best. You know what I mean? Sometimes I don't want to believe it myself, but it's the truth. I'm the best. I'm going to show you how great I am.
From Southern California, this is the Last Round Podcast.
Welcome back to episode 147 of the Last Round Podcast and a heavyweight championship fight week in Las Vegas, Nevada at the T-Mobile Arena. Mike, do you think that T-Mobile Arena is now the marquee arena in the West Coast?
What West Coast? In terms of the big fights, yeah. Obviously, I don't know whether you get the same atmosphere that you get at the StubHub or the Dignity Health Sports Arena, but that doesn't attract, the big names like it does in Las Vegas.
Of course.
Probably due to the tax.
Exactly. It always comes back around to the money. But thanks again for joining us, whether you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Boxing Socials, YouTube, wherever you're at, however you're listening. We appreciated it, as we mentioned, in a heavyweight championship on ESPN and Fox. I guess it's a joint pay-per-view once again between Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury this upcoming Saturday, the 9th of October. Like I said, on pay-per-view from the T-Mobile Arena. Tyson Fury defends his WBC Heavyweight World Championship in his third fight against Deontay, the Bronze Bomber Wilder. So obviously the first fight was a draw, even though many spectators at the time felt that Tyson Fury deserved the decision. And in the second fight, Tyson Fury just completely ran through Deontay Wilder and stopped him. So what happens this upcoming Saturday in the trilogy fight, Mike?
Going straight into it. I think, looking back at really what happened over the trilogy, Wilder, called Tyson Fury out, thinking that, all that weight loss and being out the ring for so long that, he was trying to take advantage of him. He was trying to take advantage of, the bad place that Tyson was in at the time, thinking that, I can, beat him before he's ready, get that added to my resume, an ex, heavyweight world champion, and it all went wrong. The first time around, looking at that fight, in my opinion, and I think most people's opinion, Fury won 10 rounds. Wilder really won just those 2 rounds that he managed to put Tyson down. They gave it a draw, second time round. I would probably say that, Fury won every single round up until the point of where he, managed to knock him out. Or if you say, obviously, the towel came in more than it really was kind of a knockout, to the point where Mark Breland, surrendered it for that side. And I honestly don't think much is going to change, in my opinion. I think that, you can't teach, old dogs new tricks. And, when it gets down to it, when, Tyson Fury puts the heat on him, in this upcoming fight, I think he'll resort back to his old way of fighting. And I think that, just whatever he tries to do, I honestly just think Tyson Fury is the better boxer all around. He can go forwards, backwards. He's got good movement. But, and it's a big but, he can still catch him. That's the only way, in my opinion, that Wilder can do it. I think, Tyson Fury's movement is too good, but there always is that, 1 in a million shot that he could catch him. And if it's the perfect shot, then it's lights out for Tyson. But if you're going to put me under the caution, tell me to put money on it, I would go Tyson Fury stoppage and maybe even quicker.
Do you think that Wilder, now with hopefully a different game plan coming into this third fight, is going to attempt to be the aggressor? I mean, he knows in the second fight, in the first fight, they were both kind of, in a way, hesitant now that we look back at it. Tyson Fury was arguably winning most of those rounds until he went down towards the end. But in the second fight, we saw a completely different Tyson Fury who wasn't hesitant. You saw no hesitancy in him. He went straight forward at him and was the aggressor of that fight and actually got the W in that fight. Do you think Wilder, to show that he's not I don't want to say scared, but maybe he's not intimidated by Tyson Fury after this second fight. Do you think he's going to go forward and try to keep Tyson Fury on his back foot? And if he does do that, does he go on his back foot, but then he goes forward as the aggressor to try to stop Wilder's momentum?
I think if Wilder does change it, I think the only thing that we've seen in the video so far is it looks like they've tried to teach him, to throw a couple of combinations and also go to the body. The problem is, what the thing that Wilder's really survived on in, all 42 of his victories so far is really just kind of using that jab and setting it up for that long right hand, because he throws everything behind it. So literally, that's why he always seems to be off balance. He kind of falls forward on himself because, people think they're out of range, but he literally throws everything behind it. And when he connects, he's got every ounce of his body in it, and that's why, he puts a lot of people out. I don't think that, he can change and go to the body. And if he does go to the body, then he's, Tyson Fury's pretty good at, laying those hooks into him, laying uppercuts into him as he comes forward. And he's going to try to change and do all these new things, and probably the biggest fight of his career, a life-changing opportunity for him to really get his world title back. Or after that, where does he go from here? He's 30, he's a little bit older than you think, and he's 36 years old or something like that. He can still rebuild and come back, but this is really a kind of a crossroads fight for him, because if he loses again, I think he's shown 3 times that he can be beaten, because he got beaten the first one. Obviously, it's not on his ledger, Fury's ledger, but he did lose. And I think going forward, it's going to be hard for him, because people now see a game plan and a blueprint on how to beat him.
Do we know what the betting odds are? Have you seen them recently?
If you fill in the airtime, I'll bring it up.
So the reason I'm asking that, because is this one of those fights where seemingly, expectedly, Tyson Fury is a high favorite, and if he is, depending if it's a big, I don't want to say discrepancy, but Fury's the favorite by a lot. Is it worth it to put money on Deontay Wilder from a financial standpoint? Just in case he wins, you win big. Is this one of those fights?
I would say so. He's definitely. Looking at the odds, Tyson Fury's 4-11 on. So you're looking at 3-1 on. Wilder's 9-4, so just over 2-1. And then obviously, if you go for what most people think, say if you went for a Deontay Wilder, KO, it's 11-4, so nearly 3s. Fury by KO is pretty much evens. It's 10-11, or Fury by a decision is 11-4, so nearly 3-1.
See, I think it might be worth it to put money on Wilder, just even though, it's one of those fights where hey, I have expendable cash here to put on this underdog. And if I lose the money, oh well. But if I win a pretty big chunk. I mean, is it worth
Wilder
it?
KO at 3-1. It's not, it's his only path to victory, in my opinion. He's never going to outbox Tyson Fury over 12 rounds. So if you just stick a Benjamin on that, some good drinking money.
Exactly. It is Las Vegas after all. Well, I mean, I think I agree that Fury is the likely favorite. And if you had to twist my arm, yes, he's going to win. But maybe it's the dramatic hardcore boxing fan in me, but is it crazy to say that I think Wilder might knock him out? Am I crazy to say that? It's the dramatic hardcore boxing fan in me that wants to see that, because it'll keep the heavyweight division a lot more, crazy as it's been. We thought it was going to be AJ and then Wilder for so many years because they had the titles, and then Fury comes back out of retirement and then takes his belt from Wilder, and then Usyk just gets AJ's belts within the last week or two and kind of throws a wrench in there. And then, we didn't even mention Andy Ruiz getting the belt from AJ at that one point, but then losing it in the next fight. But kind of throwing monkey wrenches in the heavyweight division, I kind of got used to that instead of all the expected winners that people assumed were going to win. I kind of got used to this craziness, like Usyk coming in and winning, even though, I didn't really count him out. The guy's a great boxer. And Ruiz, I don't think anybody thought Ruiz was going to win. That definitely was the shock of the last 10 years, probably. I mean, the craziness in you as a boxing fan, wouldn't you want Wilder to win just to keep it interesting?
No.
Really? Why not?
I mean, I prefer Fury.
But there's no more AJ fight on the horizon, at least not anytime soon.
That'll always be big, though. It won't be as big. It's not going to be the 150, 200 million Dubai, United Arab Emirates fight. But, as a British fight fan, that'll always be big. Just to the fact that, it's two British heavyweights, ex-champion plus current champion, obviously depending on what happens, this weekend. So it's a big fight in Britain, just if they had no belts, to find out who's the biggest, baddest heavyweight. I'm sure that a lot more people now, that were on the AJ train, will now probably be on the Tyson Fury train, because he's kind of obviously exposed, maybe a little bit too harsh, but he was shown that he can be beaten. The Ruiz one you can always put down to some type of fluke, or the fact that AJ had supposedly gone in with like an injury or whatever it was. I'm sure we'll find out when AJ retires. But this one he got completely outboxed, by the smaller guy and Usyk. So I think Tyson Fury kind of being like a slightly bigger version, of a high boxing IQ. A really good boxer, mover. I think a lot of people will, pick Fury over AJ, but I still believe it'll be a big fight. Not over here, maybe in the US, but I think in the UK it'd still be huge. It'd still sell out, like a Wembley, O2, Cardiff, somewhere like that. Eventually, later down the line, and the payday will still be one of, if not the biggest, for those two guys.
Do you think that with Usyk recently winning the world titles from Anthony Joshua, he has the reputation of being a road warrior since his, all of these major wins that he's had, all the, a lot of major wins or a lot of wins in his career up until this point have been on the road in his opponent's home country, essentially. Do you think that, let's just say Wilder wins, for example, and then him and Usyk for a year or two, whatever, hold on to those titles? Does Usyk come to the United States for a unification bout against Wilder?
Yeah, I mean, I think that he would. I think that he seems very down to earth. I think he seems to know the boxing business, been around it for so long in the amateurs and then in the pros. I think he understands that he may be able to attract a smaller heavyweight to the Ukraine to kind of do like a homecoming fight for him in front of his fans. But I think he understands that like a Fury, a Wilder, an AJ, somebody like that, you've really got to follow the money, and you have to go to the US or the UK. That it's going to be peanuts taking somebody like that and fighting them in the Ukraine to the amount of money available for like a Deontay Wilder in Las Vegas.
Staying on the Wilder topic, we put out a tweet within the last couple days. I'll read it, what we put out. So number one, Wilder claims his water was spiked. Number two, that his outfit was too heavy. Number three, obviously his former trainer, Mark Breland, there was that issue there, and then they split. Number four, Wilder thinks Fury cheated. Number five, the referee was biased. And then number six, the injured bicep situation. We asked our followers within the last couple of days in that tweet if they thought that Deontay Wilder actually believes all those excuses. Mike, do you believe he believes all those excuses? Or is this just a marketing tactic to help promote the fight?
From, obviously, we don't know Deontay Wilder, personally, but from the way
we're speculating here.
You're right. But like from from the way that he talks and the way that like he gets very emotional and worked up about the events, I would say he either generally kind of believes some of those or he's convinced himself that it's true. You know, it's just the way that he is. He gets very emotional, the venom behind what he says. He's either a very, very good actor in the way that he does it, you know, just to trying to convince his loyal, you know, PBC fans and people like that. Or, you know, he's got to the point where he's kind of made those excuses and he's talked about them so long, he's actually kind of, you know, managed to convince himself that, you know, either one or a few of them, you know, are genuinely true. Obviously, you have that type of thing where, you know, fighters have to convince themselves because he doesn't want to, you know, tell himself that he was beaten by the better man and, you know, gets in there, you know, for this third time round. And, you know, he's kind of, you know, wary or, you know, second guesses himself because of the fact that Fury's already had his number, you know, technically twice, even though, you know, the first one was called a draw, like we keep saying. So we'll see. I think, you know, I think he's very hesitant. If you look at the fight, you know, the first time around and the second time around, you know, he can just see that the boxing IQ of Fury is just miles beyond what you know, Wilder can do. He just does those, you know, those double feints, and Wilder just doesn't know what to do. He kind of just stands there, like kind of dazed, like, oh shit, like I was going to throw, but he's moved twice, and I don't know what to do. And you know, the fact that the way that his normal style is, you know, been extremely flat-footed to try to, you know, generate as much power as he can, it just throws him off. And I just don't think, you know, he's had enough time to be able to, you know, change his style completely. And I think he's still going to be so flat-footed with that huge stance, and, you know, Fury's just going to have his number again.
I think regardless if he legitimately believes those excuses or not, ultimately it has helped the promotion and the marketing of this third fight. I think it's made it bigger than what it would have been if these, I guess, these excuses that he put out there, these reasons for his loss, that if he didn't put them out there, the third fight wouldn't be as big. But I mean, you got to remember, I mean, we know, following boxing as closely as we do, as he was making all these claims and giving all these interviews, boxing media was running with this and talking about it all the time. Video interviews, analysis, written pieces. It was all over the place because it was intriguing because some people thought it was hilarious. A lot of people thought it was hilarious. Like, oh, well, your suit was too heavy, and making memes about it and this and that. And then people dissecting that, you know, his water was spiked, and then his trainer, Mark Breland, a lot of people came to his defense saying he didn't do anything. He did the right thing and stuff like that. It gave a lot of marketing, not only to Wilder, but to this third fight. Because, you know, they're going to be talking about that. I mean, the press conference, we're recording this before the final press conference this week. But I'm assuming they're going to be talking about that. Maybe Fury's going to bring it up. Somebody's going to bring it up, you know, kind of try to get under Wilder's skin. If Wilder does any post press conference interviews, I mean, the boxing media who's there should press him on it. Like, hey, you know, do you still believe that? You know, or has enough time passed where you kind of had time to reflect on those things you said, you know? Because I mean, like, I don't think he has. I think he's actually doubled down on a lot of them. Am I wrong? Hasn't he done like recent interviews, or has there been recent reports essentially that he still seems like he fully believes all those excuses that he put out?
I did see an interview, a brief one with him, where he kind of, you know, like a politician, you know, kind of like skipped around it. And I saw one with Shelley Finkel where he kind of did a very similar thing and didn't really answer the question, just kind of like looked like he was going to, and then kind of danced around it a lot. But no, it's, you know, it's a very intriguing thing. You know, is he just a master in the PR? You know, is he like a Conor McGregor, where, you know, Conor McGregor will, you know, tweet something very controversial. He'll leave it out there for 5-10 minutes, and then he'll deliberately delete it knowing that's going to go even bigger because everyone's going to be like, oh crap, like Conor wrote this and he suddenly realized what he wrote and he took it down, but I've got a screenshot of it. He's master manipulator. He knows what he's doing. Great in PR, Conor McGregor. So that is interesting. Has he gone down that route? Did somebody tell him like, hey, just come out with loads of wild excuses because it'll make the rounds, one, because they're ridiculous, but two, there's no publicity like bad publicity. That old saying, it's still news. It's still going to be out there. Like you said, people are going to tweet it and retweet it and stuff like that. Just the fact that, it's ridiculous doesn't really matter. It still sells. And, he was out the ring for how long, but we were still talking about him because of the fact of all of this. And then we were still talking about him because he went MIA and everyone's like, well, where the hell is he? Is he training? Is he not training? Is he coming back? Is he retired? So, he does have somebody, really, really good at PR in his team who told him to do this. And, it was, a stroke of genius.
I think like, I don't know, did you call him passionate or emotional? One of those words, I forgot which word you used exactly, but I agree with that. I think he's a very passionate guy. And after that first loss in the second fight, I think, with somebody with the success that he's had in his professional career, taking your first loss is always hard. It's always difficult. Some people can recover from it and some never do. But with Deontay Wilder, I think there's a good, decent chance that he really believed all those excuses. And if I had to guess or speculate, as time went on, maybe he thought about it, maybe he had conversations with certain people or whatever, and maybe he thought, oh, well, maybe they aren't accurate. Maybe I kind of jumped the boat a little bit with saying all that kind of stuff. But his marketing team, I mean, you got to think about it. He's one of the most well-known fighters, at least in boxing, at the moment, and he has been for a couple of years, especially being a heavyweight. You don't think that the PR team of Al Heyman, Shelly Finkel, or PBC in general, Swanson Communications and them, you don't think they told him, like, hey, just embrace it? He's like, they're talking about it. Your name is staying relevant. That's going to keep your price tag up. Your stock is going to stay up as long as you're being talked about, regardless of what it is. I mean, that's what I would do. I think that's what we would do if we were in a situation like that with a fighter and say like, well, it's already out there, just keep talking about it. Double down on it. Because they're talking about you. Like you said, like that we talked about, they're talking about you publishing all this stuff, video interviews. They're asking other boxing personalities in the sport, their analysis on it, their reaction to it. They're writing about it. They're talking to sources in a sense, like, hey, talking to this person, talking to Mark Breland. And, like you said, no publicity is bad publicity, technically. And I think that's what happened. I think he's just doubling down on it. And it just makes the fight that much more intriguing. I mean, there's obviously a lot of people who, I don't want to say a lot of people, maybe some people, a good portion of boxing fans who feel that the third fight is not necessary. That Fury, he should have won the first fight, even though it was a draw. And then the second fight, he left no doubt and stopped him. But I think, and you tell me if you agree with this or not, I think Wilder's excuses make this third fight intriguing to a lot of people besides that certain demographic who might think that it's not necessary. I think those excuses and the marketing and the promotion based off of those excuses make Wilder's chances a lot more intriguing in this third fight. What do you think?
I'll kind of twist it and I'll fire it back at you. So the first fight, according to Wikipedia, 325,000 buys for the first fight in the US. Second fight, between 800 and 850,000 pay-per-view buys in the US. So going off what you just said with all the stuff that they've done and stuff like that, obviously, I would think there's obviously been substantially less promotion for the third because, we were talking about them. Where did they do it? Was it the college final? College football final?
College football? Yeah.
College
American football.
Yeah, and then Super Bowl. Did they advertise it at the Super Bowl?
You know what? I think they might have. I think they had a commercial.
I think there was a little commercial during the Super Bowl and stuff like that. And obviously you had Joe Tessitore on ESPN saying he was going to do over 2.5 million buys, stuff like that. They were really campaigning for that. So, I think we're looking at more numbers closer to the number one fight. I think we're looking at more 325, maybe even less. Maybe I'm thinking like 250,000 buys over here in the US, just due to the fact of, like you said, I think a lot of people are taking it for granted that I think Fury will defeat him kind of like he did the first time and the second time, in relative ease. And obviously the lack of promotion, people not knowing whether the fight's going to be on or off until kind of late notice. I think that all will take into account, and I think we're looking at definitely closer to 250,000.
So you think it does less than the first and second fight, not combined, but just in general?
Yeah, I think it'll do less. I mean, it's definitely going to do less than the second. It's never going to reach anywhere near 800 to 850.
And that was considered the second one pay-per-view wise, that was considered a failure because you had ESPN and Fox pretty much throw all their resources into the marketing, and they didn't even, reportedly, they didn't even crack 1 million.
I think then Bruce Trampler or maybe even Bob Arum admitted that they made a loss, right?
I think I believe it was Trampler. He's like talked about certain things about that.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure they had it. They estimated around 1 million would be kind of like the threshold for making a profit, I believe, and that's why they threw so much stuff at it. And I'm pretty sure that they made a loss on that. So it's kind of interesting, this time around.
I mean, that just
how are they going to do that?
That just shows you how difficult it is that you had the two, at least in the United States, the two biggest media companies in a sense throw a good chunk of their resources behind this event. You had Fox and you had ESPN, who's owned by Disney, and they made a loss. They didn't even crack 1 million buys. That just shows you how difficult the pay-per-view market is and how much personality matters. Like I know Fury has a crazy personality and stuff like that, but at the end of the day, he is English. So I feel like American fans aren't as attracted to him in terms of like purchasing pay-per-view bouts with him. But I mean, if you throw in, who do you think would be more successful in the US if they both started in the US coming across from the UK at the same time? Would it be AJ or would it be Tyson Fury? If it was like a pay-per-view market or ratings or something like that.
That's a good question. AJ's more of a business model, isn't he? AJ, I kind of think knows what to say and stuff like that. And I think when you get older and, myself, I don't really listen to many of AJ's interviews because they're all kind of fake. He doesn't really speak from the heart. He speaks from something that he's been told to say before he sat down. Whereas Tyson Fury, rightly or wrongly, you ask him a question, most of the time he'll give you a answer from the heart, or he'll give you like a mad piece of news that you can kind of go around and, put into the paper because he kind of understands PR. And, sometimes that does come and bite him in the butt, kind of like, Billy Joe Saunders, because they say something that they think's humorous and they haven't really thought about what they're going to say. I would probably go with AJ, even though Tyson Fury has that, the backstory of the mental health and, kind of, wanting to kill himself and stuff like that, because of the fact that, Tyson's done it over here and him, hasn't sold out, in my opinion. Like he's kind of known over here, but I went to some, several of his fights in Vegas and they didn't sell out. Whereas I think AJ probably would. Maybe Eddie Hearn's just better at that marketing, PR or something like that. Because, Tyson doesn't really sell out in the UK, whereas, Anthony Joshua, whatever enormous stadium they open up for AJ, he sells it out, within a day or a couple of days. Was it Eddie was saying, like last time, if they could have sold all the seats, they could have got like something ridiculous, like over 150,000 or something like that. If all the calls that were rejected and turned away, were available for tickets, they could have sold out like Wembley twice or something. It's insane,
crazy.
Insane amount of tickets to want to see that guy. And it'll probably be similar even after a loss. I think people just want to see him, whilst he's here and whilst he's fighting.
Do you think that I agree with how you described AJ as kind of like he's very businesslike, he's very PR savvy, like he knows, if you want a fighter model of who to follow, like to rely on in terms of marketing, interviews, like, hey, it's him. He's your guy. He's a good model for that. But do you really think like all of his answers are fake? Really? Like I see, like I don't really think they are. Like, I mean, I think he said certain things here and there where he kind of gets upset or whatever. But like, I really feel like he believes what he says. Like, like
trained. Maybe not fake as in he's giving you a false answer, but they're all trained. Very media savvy and what he says. And sometimes when he's having one of those days where it's all media trained, like he speaks in motivational quotes and stuff like that, where like you think to yourself,
I agree with that.
This isn't you, AJ. You've been brought up in, like they always say he was brought up in, like, the streets of Watford in the UK and stuff like that. And, obviously they're going to train him because of the media mogul that he is. He's huge. Probably the biggest star in boxing alongside, obviously, Canelo. So, they can't just unleash him, into the media and not give him any training. But, at times it does feel that a lot of the sports people now, you kind of turn the interviews off because you kind of have a gist of what they're going to say to every question. They're all been trained on what to say at all times. And, it's kind of pointless at times listening to them.
Yeah, I could see that. But who knows? But Wilder Fury 3 this Saturday. You're going by Fury by, did you say decision or stoppage?
I think stoppage. I think maybe even quicker, because I think, the fact that a lot of the times when you get rematches, people have the other person's number and they also kind of grow in confidence after beating them the first time. So I think Fury may be quicker, if not, around, what was it, the 7th?
I think so.
There's a similar round, maybe quicker, maybe, like 5, 6, 7.
Yeah.
Because he did come in a little bit light, if I remember rightly. I remember his dad saying that, he'd lost too much weight. And I think this time, looking at the pictures and stuff like that, he's come in, heavier. So he can probably take some of those shots easier from Deontay. And also, he's got more, more power and more, when he like leans on him and, grabs him and tussles with him and throws him around and stuff like that, he's got even more mass to do that with this time round. So, I think like 5, 6, 7. But so
what weight does Wilder come in at? Because obviously we've seen him come in like at 227, 225 or something. And then he was at 209 and then 212. What weight does he come in at this week?
I think he looks bigger. I think he looks a little bit more muscular this time around.
I think
he probably
230. I think
that's his max, right? That he's ever came in at.
I think so, but I think it'll be 230. I think. I'm guessing.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that. He does look, I think, a little bit bigger this time around, and I think, I assume he probably watches some of the build-up and stuff like that, and with, everybody sort of speculating that Tyson's going to come in heavier. Maybe he's decided, what, I don't want to get manhandled by him, so I'm going to come in a little bit heavier this time around. So, yeah, I mean, I could see that. Yeah, I would say, I don't think he'll come in too much heavier because I think he still wants to be explosive, due to the fact that, like, if he does manage to catch him. Right. So I think like 225, 230 would seem like a good estimate.
Just to keep it interesting here on the last round, I'm going Wilder, KO. I think he KOs him. I think so. I think we're going to see 4 fights of this. I think we're going to see a Marquez-Pacquiao type right here. I think we're going to see that.
Something I forgot to bring up when we were talking about the excuses earlier, something I forgot to touch on is if Deontay did believe all of those excuses, especially the ones about the gloves and the water and stuff like that, why would he agree to go back to Las Vegas? That's supposedly the commission that missed all of these things.
Money. But that adds more credence to our conversation a few minutes ago about marketing. and promotion. That adds more credence to that theory that he was saying all that stuff. It might have been sincere initially, but it ended up being a part of the promotion and the marketing for the event. Or who knows? Only he knows, him and his team know, maybe his close circle. Maybe it was a part of the promotion and marketing the whole time. And he really doesn't believe that, but he said that to keep his name in the public, in the boxing media, to keep his name relevant, to keep attention and more intrigue on this third fight. So, yeah, I think that's a good point. That it's like, all the shit he was talking, and he goes back to the commission, to the state, to the city where it happened. So, yeah, I think that's a very, very intriguing and interesting point. But, all the big fights in the U.S. go to Vegas. So, I mean, where else was it going to go? New York, but New York's like popular, but they have more taxes. So that's why everybody goes to Vegas. All the big fights are in Vegas because the tax rate in the United States in Vegas is a lot lower than, for example, big cities like Los Angeles, New York City and stuff like that. So that's why it goes there. But yeah, we'll see, man. We'll see. But all right, you're going Fury, stoppage. And like I said, just to kind of keep it interesting, I'm putting my money behind Wilder on this one. I think he's gonna take it. But if he doesn't, next week I'll be the first one to say I messed up. I just don't want to sit on the fence and be like, I already said at the beginning that I thought Fury is the likely favorite and he would probably likely win. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think that's very, very more than reasonable. But I don't know. Like I said, it's the dramatic boxing fan in me to want to see Wilder win.
It's interesting now because of the fact that Usyk beat AJ. We had it kind of written in stone just about, what was going to happen next. And now the fact that, Usyk's beating AJ, those two are obviously going to rematch, the start of next year. Where do these guys go? Win, lose, or draw? Where did both of these go? Obviously, like Tyson's brought out that list that was probably just PR about, after he beats Wilder, he's going to fight, Dillian White, and then he was going to fight AJ, and obviously that all got, thrown away due to what happened the other week. There was an interesting interview today by Andy McCart. I think it was Andy on the IFL TV, where he said that Mauricio Suleiman. He says that they're going to make an announcement tomorrow, I think pertaining to what's going to happen to Dillian White and the winner of this fight Saturday.
Oh yeah, so I'll believe it when I see it.
Right?
We'll see. But moving on, after a long conversation on this main event between Wilder and Fury, we move on to the undercard. The undercard is very strong. It's a very, very good undercard. And when do we actually say that about actual fight cards? Like, it's very rare to say, hey, this undercard is pretty entertaining. It should be entertaining. It's very strong. The co-main event, Robert Helenius, 30-3, goes up against Adam Kaunacki. I believe that's how you pronounce it, or Kaunacki. I think it's Kaunacki, is I believe how they pronounced it. He's 20-1. This might steal the show too, man. Two heavyweights. What do you think about this fight?
Interesting fight because, the first time around, obviously, Kaunacki went in, as the favorite. Helenius had, that controversial victory over Derek Chisora, many moons ago. And I think he was just kind of known as, like an also-ran in the heavyweight division. And I think, Adam Kaunacki, it was in New York, if I remember rightly, in front of all of his Polish fans, his hometown. And I think most people thought that he was going to run away with it. I don't know whether that was the reason that Kaunacki didn't really perform. Did he overlook him? Or, was it just, Helenius, turned up on the night? Interesting fight. The first one was a good one. I'm going to go Kaunacki. I think he's going to come in this time a little bit more driven. And I think those punches and bunches and the high work rate would, get the victory over Helenius, who looks, he's just kind of slow. He was very ponderous.
Do they fight a third time if Kaunasky wins?
That's a good question, actually.
I don't think Kaunasky would want to, but
do you know what? With the fact that like we just kind of touched on, not that any of these two will. Well, you never know. Could be world champion. They could do if it's a fight that was kind of similar to the first that drew a lot of attention. Then it could be their biggest and best payday. All the titles are all tied up in those top 4 or 5 people. So what where else do you go unless you just get yourself a gimme? If this is anywhere near as as exciting as the first fight, then why not? Why not do it again?
I think that whoever wins this fight, especially if it's Helenius, if he wins and he beats Kaunasky's 2 in a row and pretty much shows like, yeah, I'm better than him. Who's next? I think that they're in line for like, a bigger name heavyweight and a bigger payday. Like, is it possible that, let's just say Wilder loses? Let's just say Wilder loses. Or maybe he wins, who knows? But let's just say he loses this Saturday. Does the winner of this fight between Helenius and Kaunasky fight Wilder next year?
That's a great shout. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. They'll get, if Wilder, well, I think he's going to lose. If Wilder loses, that's a great shout. Like that. And then also you look at Andy Ruiz is probably looking for a partner to dance with as well, right? So yeah,
he has to stop getting tattoos on his butt first.
Right, I saw that on Twitter.
Where did that come from?
It means good quality, but I just don't need to see his.
I got so many texts from people about that. It's just like, you see this?
The weird thing was I saw it and somebody had reposted it saying it was a girl saying, "Man, he has a nicer butt than I do," and I was like, "What the hell?"
I don't know, man. I don't know. Shout out to Andy Ruiz and his tattoo artist. But yeah, Robo Helenius and Adam Kaunasky. Obviously, the first fight, Kaunasky was the favorite, and Helenius upset him. So I just hope this second fight this Saturday is just as intriguing. I would think Kaunasky is going to come in and really be well aware of this guy's talent and be like, okay, I'm sure he's trained for it. I would agree that I think Kaunasky takes it. I think so. But Helenius has already proven that he can beat him. And I think he stopped him in the first one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's already shown that. So if you do it once, you could do it again. I mean, it's boxing. All it takes is one shot. So it could happen. This is a very intriguing fight too. Like you said, it's a pretty stacked undercard. So we'll see how it goes. Moving on, F.A. Ajagba. Man, these names. F.A. Ajagba. Every time I've said his name, I've probably said his name on this show over 10, 15 times. I don't even know since we started the last round here, but it always tongue twists me. But the undefeated F.A. Ajagba, 15-0, goes up against Frank Sanchez, who fights out of the Canelo Alvarez camp in San Diego, California. This is for the WBC Continental Americas heavyweight title, your favorite title, Mike, in the heavyweight division. What do you think about this matchup? This is another pretty solid matchup between heavyweights, 2 undefeated heavyweights, 18-0 Frank Sanchez, Ajagba 15-0. Hey man, on paper, so far, these 2 heavyweight fights right behind Wilder and Fury, they seem like they're going to be pretty entertaining.
This should be an entertaining fight, I think, whilst it lasts. I think F.A. Ajagba, after kind of watched him a little bit more in, his last, I think, 2 outings that were on TV, massively overrated, massively. Very robotic, slow, ponderous, no boxing IQ. I think Frank Sanchez will knock him out. I think Frank Sanchez, if he puts, his foot on the gas, I think he knocks him out early, first 3 or 4 rounds.
But wasn't Frank Sanchez in his last fight, didn't he not look that good, if I remember correctly? Or am I misremembering that? He fought in the Canelo fight, right? Canelo card?
Let me pull that up. He fought, yes.
Was it?
Against Billy Joe Saunders.
Was it Billy Joe Saunders, right? That was a Billy Joe Saunders card. I feel he ended up winning the fight, but
technical decision.
Yeah, but like he had before the fight ended, he had kind of a difficult time. Like it wasn't as easy as expected as people thought. Like, oh, he should win. Like he actually kind of had some bumps in the road there.
I think they're both very similar. No, you're right. Yeah, you're remembering correctly. Yeah, but I think Jagba was the same. If you remember, F.A. Jagba, who did he fight? I'll pull that up.
When's the last time he fought?
When he fought Brian Howard, he got a 3rd round knockout. But I think it was when he fought. Was it Jonathan Rice or?
What card was that?
The Jonathan Rice card was a 10-round unanimous decision in Nevada on the Pedroza Molina. But if you remember when he fought Rojan on the first fight between Kaunaki and Helenius.
Yeah.
He fought Rojan, that was it, Kojanu, and he had him down in the 8th and the 9th. But if you remember in the first few rounds of that Rajan Kojanu, had him rocked a few times. He didn't look. They're both very similar in terms of what they've done so far. They have, 15-0, 18-0 records, but they've both gone through patches during fights where they didn't look like we've been told. When you listen to the commentators, they tell you that, he's the next great, he's the next big thing. And they both look the part, really, really tall, in shape, and they've been sold to us. But I honestly think this is kind of the end of the line for one of them, because I don't think they're, as skillful, as well-rounded as, they're kind of sold to us as.
Right. No, yeah, you're right.
We'll see.
Either way, I hope it's entertaining. Like I said, these ones on paper, so far, Helenius, Kanaski, Ajagba, Sanchez, seems like we should be getting some pretty good heavyweight action right there. Also on the card, Edgar Berlanga, 17-0, top ranks, rising star from Puerto Rico, right? Oh, he's from New York, but he's Puerto Rican. Goes up against Marcelo Esteban Coceres. This is for the vacant WBO, NABO super middleweight title. Berlanga obviously had his KO streak, consecutive KO streak snapped, right? Does he jump back on the KO streak here with the KO in this fight? I think he does.
Interesting. If you remember, how do you say it? Is it Coceres? He fought Billy Joe Saunders on the undercard of the YouTubers that was at the Staples Center that I attended.
On the zone.
Yeah, when Billy Joe Saunders kind of turned up, and looking a little bit podgy, and obviously hadn't taken it too seriously, and Billy Joe won by a KO in the 11th, but really, really struggled early on and looked like he was probably down on the cards until he manages to, I think Ben Davison kind of gave him a slap and, told him like, hey, you need to put your foot down on the gas here. You're actually behind, and he managed to take him out. So I think it shows not that Billy Joe's the biggest puncher in the world, but Coceres obviously, can take a little bit of a beating. He's only been KO'd once in 33 fights. So hopefully he can teach, Berlanga a thing or two and take him some rounds. But I'm going to go with, I think Berlanga will win. And I think late stoppage.
I think KOs him. Yeah, I think he finishes in late. I think he starts a new KO streak here. I think he does. So I think he's going to be a little bit more cautious after losing his KO streak. But I think he ends up getting the stoppage anyways. So we'll see. But Berlanga, obviously one of the little rising stars in the sport of boxing, coming out of top rank right there. Julian Williams, 27-2-1, goes up against Vladimir Hernandez. So J-Rock against Hernandez. What do you think about this bout?
Interesting, Vladimir Hernandez kind of seems like he's been picked as cannon fodder for a lot of people, down the line. He fought Israel Madrimov in 2018, Suleiman Sissoko in 2019.
And he's only 12-4. That's not a lot of fights.
No, and he's been in there with, some guys that we all, recognize the names. And then he's also in there and actually claimed a victory last year over Alfredo Angulo.
Oh, what? El Perro Angulo? What?
Yeah. So he obviously knows his way around the wing.
What a legend.
Ring, managing to beat Angulo. But yeah, I think it's a
yeah, but that was an old Angulo. Do you want to really give him credit for that?
He's on the ledger. Wouldn't. He's on the ledger.
Yeah, I guess he's in the history books. He's like, hey man, I beat Alfredo Angulo. So he
Right.
can always say that, regardless if people say like, yeah, but it wasn't the Angulo from like 15 years ago. But he's still on the resume.
Right. I mean, I think it's a fight really that they've picked for Julian Williams to get back into the win column. This is his first fight back in since January 2020 when he lost his world titles to Jason Rosario. So it'd be interesting to see him back.
Is the crime fighting cut man going to be in J-Rock's corner?
I would imagine so. Yeah, he normally works with him. So I'd have to check out the Instagram and see if Mike is on there. But yeah, I would assume he'd be, and it's local.
Yeah, so I'm assuming he's going to be up there. He like he said, he's busy. He goes to the non-televised fights and he goes to the big fights and he's always there. He's popping up. Him and Stitch are definitely the most prevalent ones in the sport right now. Rounding off the Wilder Fury 3 card this Saturday from the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas on pay-per-view. Robesai Ramirez, 7-1, goes up against Orlando Gonzalez Ruiz. What do you think about this bout?
Interesting to see, the development of Ramirez, since going to Ishmael Salas. So, I'm sure this is a fight. Obviously, the person he's fighting has, substantially more, professional bouts than he does. But I think, with Robozy Ramirez's, background, two-time Olympian. I think eventually we're going to see what everybody was, talking about when he hit the professional ranks. Obviously, he had that slip up early on, and I think it was actually his first fight. And then he changed camp to Ishmael Salas, and ever since then he's, had steadily, made improvements over time. And Salas is a, world-renowned coach for a reason. And I think, he'll teach Ramirez the good ways. And, I think he's more one of those guys that's going to be, slowly but surely. He's not going to be like a Lomachenko that just hits the pro scene and is fighting for world titles in, second and third fights like people expected.
Yeah, with that Olympic pedigree and that change to Salas, obviously it's working. And we'll touch on Lomachenko in a few minutes. But moving on, also this upcoming weekend from the Echo Arena across the pond in Liverpool on DAZN, Liam Smith, 29-3-1, goes up against Anthony Fowler. I'm intrigued by this fight too. What do you think about it?
I'm looking forward to it. I think people kind of forget because Fowler turned pro, kind of late, that they kind of look at the fight as in like at the old guy in Liam Smith against the newcomer, the up and coming prospect in Fowler. Fowler's 30. He just turned pro late because of his amateur pedigree. So it's not really that, but in terms of fights, yes, Fowler's only had 16 fights, but when he did step up and fight, Scott Fitzgerald, whether he overlooked him or not, he came unstuck. So this is going to be an interesting fight. I've not been the biggest fan of Fowler's style. He is kind of trying to change this under McGuigan. So we'll see. I do get a feeling that if Liam Smith has something left in the tank, and the fact that he's fighting kind of for the pride of Liverpool, where they're both from, a big fight city in the UK, I think he might do it. I think he might do it late as well. I think Fowler may just get too busy too soon and kind of punch himself out, because he does seem a little bit stiff when he goes into the big fights. He doesn't look, like really, really relaxed and stuff like that, which is obviously, very draining. And I think Smith may take it, late, whether it be a KO or TKO, the referee steps in or something like that.
Well, Liam Smith just turned 33 this past July. Do you think that, he's obviously been in the game for a while, has over 30 bouts and stuff like that. He fought Canelo, he's had some pretty crazy wars in that squared circle. I don't know why, but I have this feeling in my gut that if he loses, especially if he loses really bad again, I feel like he's the type of guy to want to retire. Am I wrong?
I mean, he's coming to the end of his career, and I think he knows that. I think that when you look at his recent interviews, he's always talking about, trying to get that one win and then trying to get himself, back up into the, into the title, title talk. Whether or not that's going to happen is a different idea. I think that, ever since he fought, it's Munguia, right? When he fought Munguia and Munguia beat him. And then, Liam kind of said, he's like, I wish I just had a little bit more time to train for that.
That's why he's been so vocal in trying to get that bout back. Cause he thought, he's like, man, like if I just fight him again, I can beat him. And
because he was sick, right, wasn't he?
A win over Munguia right now, with Munguia, obviously being young and having a world title, or he had a world title at 154. It would give Smith more notoriety and it would give him more attention. So I think he knew that. And that's why he was like, let me fight him again. But Golden Boy and Zanfer Boxing, they know that. So they're like, we're not going to put him in there again because Munguia already had a tough time with him. And, so they know that's why they're keeping him away. And they're like, oh, maybe if they ever put him in there with him again, it's going to be as he gets older. Well, he's obviously getting older, but I don't know, man. Like, I think Fowler beats him. I mean, I know, well, I don't know. I like this fight too. This is a good fight. I think it's intriguing, but I just think that Smith still has some left in the tank, but his career, the fights he's been in have really taken a toll on him. And I think Fowler, like you mentioned, especially with his amateur pedigree, I think he has a shot here, and I think he's going to take it. But you said you're picking Smith?
I believe, yeah, I think so. I think Smith will just be like more relaxed. I think, his experience in the pro game. Fowler just, when he stepped up, hasn't looked great so far. Maybe I'm just wrong. I just don't like his style. I don't like the way that he boxes. It's a little bit robotic, a little bit wooden for me, which doesn't mean he can't win the fight. Maybe that's just, clouding my judgment because I'm not a big fan of the way that he fights. But I think Smith might kind of old man him. I think he's, the fights he's been in, the big fights he's been in. And, he came off a recent loss when he went over to Russia and fought Kubanov. Yeah. A lot of people said that he kind of got done by some, home judging there. And right. Smith really should have, snuck that and picked up the WBO International, which would have given him, a nice high ranking for the WBO title.
Right.
Time's not on his side as well. So if anything, I'm sure that Liam Smith knows that and doesn't leave any stone unturned in, his training camp for this. And it's like I said, it's, you're fighting for the pride of Liverpool. You've got to walk around those streets kind of saying like, I beat, Fowler and stuff like that. And he seems to be taking it serious. There was no handshakes and stuff like that when the fight was announced, kind of saying like, hey, we're going to war. We're not friends. There's no need to, do this false handshake. I want to win. You want to win. Fowler's been very quiet, compared to some of his other fights. I think he kind of knows that it's all on the line. So, yeah, it should be interesting for a nice early morning fight for us on a Saturday morning.
Absolutely. At least you can admit your faults, Mike, in saying that your judgment is probably clouded here for Anthony.
We'll find out Saturday morning.
We'll find out Saturday morning, obviously, on DAZN. Also on the card, Ted Cheeseman, 17-2-1, goes up against Troy Williamson for the British super welterweight title. What do you think about this matchup?
Interesting matchup, really. Cheeseman had that short period of when he looked like he was going to burst onto the scene and then took a couple of losses against Sergio Garcia, a draw against Kieran Conway, and then a loss to Fitzgerald, where I think a lot of people thought, he's not going to make it. And then obviously it came out about him, having, problems at home and stuff like that. Then he managed to turn it around with some good victories over Eggington and Metcalf. Troy Williamson, actually from, my neck of the woods back home, kind of came to the scene kind of late. He's already 30 years old. Good fighter, interesting to watch, high KO percentage. I honestly, I'm going to have to go with Cheeseman, though. On his recent performances, he's just been in there with like a whole host of, British/European level fighters as well. But like you just touched on when you're talking about Liam Smith, sometimes those fights take it out of you. Right. There's only so many times, that old saying, there's only so many times you can go to the well. And Cheeseman, when he fights, he leaves everything on the line. That's why he's kind of, you've seen since DAZN has come over here, a lot of people in the boxing media and a lot of fans in the US like him. They like his all action style because he just empties the tank every time.
Visually appealing.
Yeah, I mean, I should really go for Williamson being from my neck of the woods, but
oh man, you're selling out right now, Mike.
I think Cheeseman. Decision. Cheeseman.
As long as we get an egg and cheese rematch later on, I'm okay with it.
But that's a good fight. Those two fights both so far should be wars.
Right. Yeah. Egg and cheese, man. That was that marketing was just you couldn't write that. You could not write that. That was awesome. Rounding off that card, Shannon Courtney, 7-1, goes up against Jamie Mitchell. Shannon Courtney obviously is coming off a win against the Blonde Bomber, right? Ebony Bridges. I think that was the last fight she had. So what do you think about this matchup?
I mean, I'm sure they're giving Shannon some good fights, trying to position her, I think, again to get in there with Ebony Bridges because they know that she sells. She's good at PR. She's good at what she does. She kind of actually struggled last time out, Ebony Bridges, but they're both signed with Matchroom, and I think the first fight really sold. Both of them left everything in the ring. You look at the bruises that Ebony Bridges has. She had that, like, one of her eyes was pretty much closed, and she fought through the last few rounds really with one eye. And that's kind of where Shannon, I think, kind of stole the fight away from her, the high work rate. So I think everybody would like to see the return of that. So I think they're trying to position Shannon with a couple of wins, Ebony with a couple of wins, and then they'll probably revisit that. I don't know, what we in now, October? April? Are they going to do another fight camp? Something like that?
I can see that. Yeah.
They'll do another fight camp in Easter summer.
Yeah, I could totally see that. I could see Shannon Courtney and Ebony Bridges fighting for a rematch. I can definitely see that. News and notes section of the last round this week. Lomachenko and Richard Comey has been announced for December 11th at New York's Madison Square Garden. Has it officially been announced, or has it just been reported?
Coppinger reported it, and then ESPN actually came out later after Mike already broke the news.
So it was actually officially announced.
ESPN put it on their official Twitter.
I mean, when the news of this came out, I think we talked about it, and I mentioned to you, Lomachenko's about to fight his second fight this year, and it seems like Lopez isn't going to fight at all this whole year. What's your take on that?
Well, that whole thing is just bizarre, isn't it?
That whole trailer is ridiculous, man. Whatever's going on about that.
I mean, I don't know how much is true, but all the the podcasts and listening to reading Coppinger and Dan Raphael saying that the fight was the 6 million purse, and then they'd spent something ridiculous like 8 to 10 million on promotion and booking different events and different arenas and trying to take it to Australia and stuff like that. So if they'd have put the event on, they probably would have been close to 15 to 20 million in the hole for a fight that's going to make nowhere near that. Like we just touched on, Wilder and Fury, being in the hole for that second fight. It's, when I read these sorts of things and, those fights are in the hole, you sit there and you think, maybe Dana White isn't crazy about, only paying the fighters like between 16 to 20%. And, those guys are making a profit. The recently read that, I think they sold it for $2 billion and it's now worth $11 billion.
Yeah. I mean, I don't, whether you agree with him or not, like he never shies away. Dana White, president of the UFC, he never shies away from defending against that criticism. I think he just recently did it where he talked about Oscar De La Hoya. I think you sent me the interview, where he talked about that, and then he talked about like the money that was made in boxing and with the Golden Boy fight and this and that. And he doesn't shy away from that criticism. He goes at it head on, and he talks about, like, he brings up statistics. He's like, this is what we did. This is what we did. He's like, we're a business at the end of the day. We have to survive. Like, I get it. I get what he's saying. Like everybody wants to make sure that these fighters, especially because they're going in there risking their lives, you want to make sure they get paid. But, like you said, we read about this stuff and like, oh, they're in the hole, or this event's in the hole, or this and that, money problems, financial situations. And yeah, I think that just stuff like that just lends more credibility to Dana White. It does. Like now is that ever going to happen in boxing where a monopoly like the UFC comes in? I mean, never say never, but it's going to be very, very difficult. It's not going like somebody has to come in and with a ton of money and buy out everybody.
It's like you said, is I think we both agree that the fighters should get paid what they're worth, what the fight is worth, but at the same time is the promotion, the fight itself, the fight card, needs to turn a profit. So if the fight is only worth $50,000, then that's, really what the fighters should get paid. But the problem is, they've had so much time where the fighters have been, kind of getting overpaid and, people are in the hole and stuff like that. And, I think, unfortunately, it tends to drop down the card and, the big names get probably massively overpaid, and the dudes who nobody knows are the guys who are unfortunately picking up like $2,000 a fight because no one cares about them. They're just there to fill the card up and no one knows who they are. And those guys are, whereas that's what it tends to be in boxing, right? You see the substantial 90% of the money from the whole event goes to the main fight. And then the rest of them pick up the scraps and they don't care. That's like we just touched on with the PBC event this weekend. It's unusual to have a stacked card from top to bottom. And that's not how it should be. That's not how it should be.
Right. I mean, you can't tell me that, like, all these promoters out there, boxing promoters, Bob Arum, De La Hoya, especially Oscar De La Hoya. I think he's mentioned it before, but if they had the chance to come out there and become a Dana White and get a monopoly over the sport of boxing and get all the best fighters, all these, the best fighters in the world under one banner and they control it, you can't tell me none of them will do that. Because that just puts more money in their pocket. Like look at Dana White, like with his contract with ESPN. They were like the only consistent sport going through the pandemic. Their ratings were high, their pay-per-views are high. Like it's working for them. The model is working. And people want to see the fighters get paid more, which I understand. Not everybody can be Conor McGregor or Canelo Alvarez and stuff like that. But that's a tough situation, man. This is a tough situation. I'm sure now if you, like you mentioned, they sold it for like $3 or $4 billion. It's worth like $11 billion now. Like I'm sure if that's true and their revenue has increased that much or whatever it has. I mean, yeah, Dana White should give bonuses or more, maybe add another, couple hundreds of thousands to these checks or whatever, depending on if they can draw or something. But I mean, it's a business. It's a business. And, boxing always says that too. Like, at the end of the day, it's a business. It's ratings. I mean, well, yeah, that's true. That's true, man. It always comes down to money. But like we talked about earlier, Wilder Fury 2, with all the resources of ESPN and Fox, didn't even crack 1 million buys. And, I think top-ranked guys, executives have said that, yeah, it was a loss. So it's hard. It's hard. So you have to be able to know how to run businesses and handle and manage fighter personalities and all that and pays. And it's just crazy. It's a crazy world, but, boxing is boxing and MMA is MMA. We'll have Ed Carbajal at Carbazo on Twitter come on soon and talk about that. Maybe the pay structure again for MMA. We'll talk about the pay structure for boxing and stuff like that. He writes for SureDog.com, My MMA News and stuff like that. So he's very immersed in the MMA world, not just UFC, but Bellator, Invicta. He's an old school fan, so he knows a lot. He's definitely probably one of the most knowledgeable, if not the most knowledgeable MMA guys that I know. But yeah, Lomachenko and Comey. Lomachenko is really showing that he doesn't care, man. Like he's like, I'm just going to keep fighting. And I think Lomachenko beats Lopez in the rematch. Am I crazy to say that? I think he does.
No, I think I kind of touched on that, back whenever it was that they fought. I've always been a big fan of Lomachenko and also a big fan of Teofimo Lopez, but I just think the boxing IQ Lomachenko, whether he was injured in the first fight or not, obviously he had the operation and stuff like that with his shoulder, but at the end of the day, he took the fight and he was in there, and that's all we can judge it on. I think after those, 6-7 rounds or whatever it was, Lomachenko worked it out. He'd solved the plan. He'd solved the fact that, Teofimo kept cutting him off because obviously, Loma used to love, throwing a couple of punches and, dropping into the left-hand side and, coming up alongside you and, doing that sort of stuff that you often see. So yeah, I would agree with that. I think Loma, if they ever get the rematch, I can see Teofimo kind of stepping up to 140 and maybe saying that I can't make 135 anymore.
Yeah, I think that's going to happen. I think Lopez steps up to 140.
Yeah.
And that doesn't fight Lomachenko again. He just runs with like, oh yeah, I beat him already. I don't need to beat him, and he just holds on to that for the rest of his career.
Yeah, I think he'll play some sort of card about. I was advised by a doctor, it's not safe for me to make 135 anymore.
They said like 2 years ago that I think his dad said, and he said that it's already difficult for him to make 135. I mean, you can kind of see based on his body type and him growing that it's like, that's
he does a lot of weights. That's why I was kind of surprised, when he was saying that. If you follow him on Instagram, he's always working out, doing a lot of weights. And I'm thinking, well, if you're struggling to make 135, then you shouldn't really be doing a lot of, weight training and stuff like that, which is going to, add muscle mass to your frame and stuff like that. But
right.
I'm sure I assume he has, some dietitians and, stuff like that. He's made some good money. He's obviously missing out on this huge, like 4 million payday, thanks to Triller. Obviously, according to the rumors, that's going to drop to Matchroom will get first refusal because they were the second highest bidder.
Right.
3 million. So,
Eddie Hearn and DAZN, I'm sure, are looking forward to that. So we'll see. But once again, guys, we appreciate you listening to this week's episode of The Last Round as we cross the finish line here for this week's episode. Go ahead, Mike, and let our listeners know where they can find us and follow us.
We're at The Last Round 12 on Instagram and Twitter, and be sure to join us next week. We'll obviously be talking about the big Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder matchup, and we'll be previewing Emmanuel Navarrete against Joet Gonzalez and Mikey Garcia against Sandor Martin.
And once again, guys, make sure to check out our merchandise. We have shirts and sweaters available with Fit Warrior brand. There's many brands that are associated with Fit Warrior brand. Teofimo Lopez is one of them. He has some merchandise on there, and a lot of other fighters and boxing companies and personalities are associated with Fit Warrior brand. They make great stuff. We got shirts and sweaters there. Check it out. There's links on my Twitter account, on I believe on our link tree. If you go to our links on our Instagram and Twitter and all that stuff, and you click the link tree that we have, it should pop up there. So please check those out. If you like them, please support us, and then tweet us or send us a message that you got something, and we'll shout you out on social media and on that next week's episode. So for my co-host Michael Shepard, I'm Danny Z. This is The Last Round.
Thanks for supporting and listening to the show. Follow us at The Last Round 12 on social media. Rate, review, and subscribe. This is The Last Round Podcast.